Hello and welcome to West Country Wanderings. Welcome to my monthly vlog for the month of September 2023. Today we're in the county of West Oxfordshire. We're in the village of Minster Lovell, which is not far from the town of Witney. Beautiful, great hall here, Minster Lovell. I'll tell you more about it and also tell you about the vlog. If you're new to West Country Wanderings or a recent subscriber, tell you a little bit about the monthly vlog format first of all. Each month, at the end of the month, I arrive at a new location in the West Country Wanderings region that I cover here on YouTube. I tell you about what's been happening on the channel for that month, also read out the very best of your comments and tell you about the area as well. So let's go and do that and tell you a little bit more about what this hall is I'm in currently. Now, the Great Hall was home to the Lovell family. They had a huge country estate in this part of West Oxfordshire, and it was founded around the 12th century. There's loads of history around here. Incidentally, I need to tell you about the village itself because it's quite complicated and complex layout. It isn't just a village that is centred around the church. It's divided into three parts. The part that we're currently in is called Old Minster. There's also a part called Little Minster. If we've got time, we'll have a look at that. And then there's a separate part which was built up around the Chartist movement around the middle of the 19th century. But yes, this is the Great Hall here, the seat of the Lovell family from the 12th century. It was lived in right up, well, some sources say towards the end of the 18th century, possibly going into the 19th, when it then fell into a ruin that you see today. Wonderful site here, right next to St Kenelm's Church. It's also now in the care of English Heritage that maintain the site. It's free to come in. Parking in the village though is a little bit difficult. I've arrived early on a weekday though, so it's pretty quiet for filming here today. But I parked about a mile outside of the village and walked in, although there were spaces outside the church or between the church and the hall when I arrived here today. But I always like to get a flavour of a place by walking through it rather than parking right where I'm going to be filming. But you're most welcome today here in Minster Lovell in West Oxfordshire. Now, as you can see, the hall here at Minster Lovell covers a large area. There is lots to see. I'll be going around, dotting around different parts of it as I tell you about the channel through the month of September here. Now, though there are no humans here while I'm filming here early on this morning here in West Oxfordshire, Minster Lovell, I do have a couple of donkeys here to keep me company. But other than that, at the moment at least, I've got the place to myself to filming. Now, Minster Lovell sits right on the River Windrush, one of the several main rivers that run right through the Cotswolds. We're here currently in the Cotswold AONB, of course. The estate, originally for the Lovell family, spread over some 2,000 acres over both sides of the River Windrush, and it was also important for the income for their food, so they had farming here as well as fishing from the river as well. And there is also a dovecot behind me. We'll see if I can get closer to that. They had a large barn here to store the grain because they had wheat growing in the neighbouring fields as well. Now, in 1553, the Crown carried out a survey of the River Windrush here and found it to contain chub, pike and crayfish too. In fact, what's behind me here are the kitchens that were used to cook all that fabulous produce that was gathered from the fields here around. Now, the church behind the Great Hall here at Minster Lovell is dedicated to St Kenelm. St Kenelm is one we've come across many times before on the channel, and we will be coming across it again on West Country Wanderings in 2024. St Kenelm was actually murdered in the Clent Hills in the northern part of the county of Worcestershire, which also lies in the region that I cover here on YouTube. And I plan to be walking the St Kenelm Way, which goes from the Clent Hills and heads south into the Cotswolds and finishes at the town of Winchcombe, where the body of St Kenelm is buried. So this is the River Windrush, one of the great Cotswold rivers, runs through the heart of the village here. wonderful bridge, which I think is 14th century, though it's been repaired and added to since then. It's quite difficult to get a shot of it there. There was a BT van in the way, but I'll try and see if I can get a shot of it as I'm making this video later on today. But yeah, so it divides the two of the three sections of the village between the Old Minsters where we are today and Little Minster, which maybe I'll have time to film later on the other side of the Windrush. And this river also goes through places like Bourton-on-the-Water, which is a really famous, and I hate the word iconic, but you know what I mean. It's a tourist honeypot. That's where they all tend to go to, is Bourton-on-the-Water. Also flows through the villages of Upper and Lower Slaughter as well. Now, before I explain about the first video that happened on the channel for the month of September, a big welcome if you're new around here to West Country Wanderings. I picked up a lot of new subscribers recently. In fact, since my last vlog, more about that in a bit, we've gone over the 2,000 subscriber mark. We're now around, I think it's 2080 as before I went filming this vlog here this morning. The first video that landed on the channel was last month's vlog, and that was from the village of Hallertrow in Baines, Bath and North East Somerset. And I had a great comment on that video from a gentleman called Martin Pope, who is also a filmmaker and one of my subscribers, and he has his own YouTube channel as well, and I'll put a link to that in the description of today's. And Martin wrote in the comments section of that video, "Great video on a place close to where I live. I remember the TV series Robin of Sherwood. I checked out clips on YouTube and I found one filmed right next to the waterfall. My wife recognised a young Ray Winstone." Yes, the actor Ray Winstone, of course, usually now known for sort of gangster Cockney type films, isn't he? But yeah, so that Robin of Sherwood was filmed in that village at Hallertrow with the wood behind there, and there are quite a few clips of it if you want to check that out. Thank you very much for that comment, Melton, on last month's vlog. Now, often I like to make videos in batches. It makes it more productive and it cuts down on travel. I know some people, I have comments saying people think I whiz around the country all the time. Well, not all the country, but the West Country Wanderings region. In actual fact, it's not actually like that. I often make two videos in the same location the same day, but they don't go out at the same time. So it looks like I've gone from Devon to Worcestershire to West Oxfordshire to Wiltshire to Somerset, etc. But I haven't done that over a period of a couple of days. I've done it because I've been filming several in that area at the same time and then spread the videos out, as was the case with the next video. I'd made another video in the area, in fact also in the Cotswolds, a lesser known part of the Cotswolds in Worcestershire at the foothills of Breeden Hill. There's a wonderful nature reserve there called Kemmerton, wonderful lake. A few miles north of there is the town of Evesham, which has now got a bypass that goes around at the A46, which heads up in the direction of Stratford and Redditch, those sort of places. Just off that is a humongous garden centre, and in 2002, part of the land, which is a country park, wonderful country park with views right across the Cotswold Hills, the escarpment there, a light railway was built. In actual fact, it's just changed hands. I think it's the third family it's gone into now, but it's in brilliant condition there. And I just turned up there when I was filming the other video in the area, and you can park literally right outside, £3 to go around this wonderful light railway. So I filmed it when I was sat in the carriages, and then I also filmed it from various different angles as you can walk around the country park, seeing the train going into and out of the tunnel there and stopping and starting at the various stations. Well, it's only 2 stations around, and then sort of cut and spliced it together so it looks like it's from multi-camera angles, where in fact it's just the one camera. Anyway, I had a great comment on that video from a gentleman called Martin Bradshaw. Thank you very much, Martin, for your comment. Thank you, Paul, for the recommendation. So Martin watched the video and then decided to go and visit the place himself. I live only a few miles from Evesham, and we took the opportunity to visit the railway with our grandchildren. It is an inexpensive day out, and the railway is well run. Yes, it is, Martin. Thanks very much for that comment, and I'm really, really pleased you had a great time out there on the light railway with your grandchildren. In the Domesday Book, 1086, this village was called Minster, M-I-N-S-T-R-E. And the reason they think that's connected to Minster is because it is believed that there was a Saxon minister in the village, although there are no remains of it today. It may have been possibly connected with a Saxon, well, high priest, if you like, in the Saxon times when you had the tribes around this part of the West Country. Natural frame, that's what you're supposed to do in photography, isn't it? But yeah, I know I'm just talking to you on West Country Wanderings here, but you have unfortunately got a bit of graffiti on this side. But here there looks like there's some stonemason marks. This is really interesting. The next video that landed on my channel was called Titanic Steelworks, and the Titanic in that was nothing to do with the good ship that was built in Belfast that unfortunately sank at the turn of the 20th century. No, nothing to do with that. This was in the Forest of Dean. There is a little bit of story as to how that video got made, because if you watch it you'll notice it's in quite a different format to my usual videos. It's one of my short bite photography series, so it's a series of photographs. However, it does try to explain the story of the remains of the Titanic steelworks in the Forest of Dean, and they do that through taking photographs of it. I later added on narration, which I recorded in the garden shed after I found out the history. I was actually feeling out of sorts the day of filming that. I took myself off to the Forest of Dean. It's my go-to place when I'm feeling out of sorts because I find it very restorative there. It's very, very remote and quiet, and I just find it really chilled out sort of place. And I was sat in a coffee shop in the town of Colford, kind of looking for inspiration or kind of thinking about going home again, and I saw a leaflet telling about the Titanic steelworks, of which of course I knew nothing at the time. Anyway, on that video I had a great comment, and it was from a gentleman called Jim Nichols, who used to live in, I think, have I got this right, Surrey. But he moved in 1972 to, I believe, New Zealand, and now runs a successful YouTube channel all about kites, which is fascinating. So if you're even vaguely interested in kites, why not check out Jim Nichols' channel? He writes in the comments, a fascinating place. Having lived in New Zealand for over 50 years, I still miss England. Oh, Sussex. I was born in Sussex and lived there until 1972. My apologies, Jim. With my 83rd birthday coming up next month, I don't think I'll make it another trip back home. So watching your videos, such as yours, is the next best thing. Thank you very much for that, Jim. And I thank you for the pleasure. It's an honour to make these videos. I really enjoy making them. And I know a lot of people, whether they're infirm now, have mobility issues, transport issues, or live a long, long way from the West Country, which they formerly called home, or were used to going on holiday in this part of the world, fantastic part of the world. They get pleasure from watching the videos, and I love reading comments like that because it makes it all the more worthwhile. Thank you. Now, I was just saying about the graffiti over there, and you had some older marks. We've got some graffiti here that dates back from, I think it's 1891. Somebody from London came on a visit here. There's some up there that's dated 1892, but that's not all. We have some graffiti here which unbelievably dates back to 1815, which makes it more than 200 years old. It got me thinking. Recently I featured a Banksy, Let Them Eat Fish, when I was in the town of Brixham in South Devon. Famous Banksy there. Banksy, mate, I think you need to change your materials, get away from the paint rubbish and start using some stone. Your graffiti will last a lot longer. Now, it's a bit of a running joke between myself and my YouTube buddy Louise from Southwest Sundays that whenever we put a video out which covers a National Trust property or location, it bombs. It doesn't do well at all in terms of views. Well, it gets a few people, but not as good as perhaps the other ones could be. So I was a bit hesitant making the next one. Not far from where I live in Gloucestershire, the National Trust opened up a new facility. It's close to their existing facility covering Woodchester Park, which lies near the town of Stroud, also here in the Cotswolds, of course. And they have a new cafe there, and also parking facility, lots of other facilities, things there for children. There's an orchard. Yeah, you get the idea, lots of things going on. It replaced a previous cafe which served I think it was like a motorhome caravan sort of park. So there was one there previously, but it's sort of been tightened up, that sort of thing. So I thought, because it's close to where I live, I'd do a video about it, and has actually done reasonably well. There's been quite a bit of local and other interest to it to see what this new facility is like, and it's great there because you can then walk right down into Woodchester Park, which has those magnificent lakes, and of course the mansion as well. Anyway, I had a great comment from one Diana Rolfe. I love reading your comments, Diana, and Diana, I think she comments on pretty much every video that I do, and I really appreciate and really love reading them. On this one she wrote, "Decidedly autumnal look to this wander. That looked really nice. Years ago, the National Trust were reluctant to make a thing of them, as in cafes, etc. Now, a cup of tea and a piece of cake does finish off a walk, a garden, or a historic house. It really makes the day." I couldn't agree more. It's a great place. You can just go there for a tea, coffee, slice of cake. You can also go there for a walk and do both as well. So it's great, and there's quite a few places like that the National Trust now have. I would imagine that places like this are the stuff as legend as well as history, and this one is no exception. In 1708, it is reputed that the remains of one Lord Lovell were found here. Now, Lord Lovell actually fought in the Battle of Stoke. I think it was around 1487. Don't quote me. I'll check that and put it in the usual way. I'm not familiar with the Battle of Stoke. I think that's presumably from the Potteries area. But yes, so he fought in that and returned here to the family and ancestral seat here in West Oxfordshire after the battle. Presumably he was hiding. He went into hiding and kind of tucked himself away into one of the very many walls and cupboards inside, but he actually died of starvation, possibly asphyxiation as well, not sure, and it was just his skeleton that remained when it was, well, allegedly found. And word has it, when the air got to him, the bones and everything else just fell to dust in a heap. So yeah, it sounds a bit fanciful, I know, but that's the legend here of Minster Lovell Hall. Now, if you're new to the channel, to West Country Wanderings, again, most welcome here on the channel, and this is a delightful place to be able to film a monthly vlog today. I do a series of videos, so there you can find them in different playlists on the channel. So if you're particularly interested in railways, just head over to the railway playlist and you'll see all my railway videos grouped together. Similarly for ones on canals. I also do a series of videos on the Cotswolds, and as well as doing the Cotswold Way, which I did when I first launched the channel it was about 2 years ago. I actually walked it now. I also do a regular one on Cotswold walks, and usually once every couple of months I do a circular Cotswold walk. Now this month has been challenging because of the weather, because we had a very wet week, but we also had a week where it was really, really hot as well. And I don't like heat. I certainly don't enjoy walking in heat. It's really uncomfortable, particularly if you're trying to film as well. It's just, you just end up looking a sweaty, soggy mess, and it's not pleasant for anyone. So I wanted to do a Cotswold walk, and I thought, well, why don't I do it really early while it's still cool? And I'm so glad I did, because I got to this village, or two villages should I say, called Oddingtons, or the Oddingtons, and the video was entitled "There's Nothing Odd About the Oddingtons," and there wasn't, but there was a spectacular sunrise which I was very fortunate to see at the start of that video. It really made it, and the colours, well, yes, there was nothing enhanced about that. That's how it looked on the day. I had a great comment, I'm just trying to find it now. I know it's from David Berlani, and David writes, "Well worth the early start. Those colours, amazing." They were. I was blown away. It's literally how I saw it through the viewfinder. It made me think of Tess of the D'Urbervilles. Yes, there is a film called, I think it's just called Tess. I can't remember who was in it now. It was directed by Roland Polanski, I believe, in 1982. Got a wonderful sunrise scene there, and you've got the cornfields and everything. It's terrific, great film. I know he's a controversial director, but it is a really good film with some wonderful actors in it. I digress. But of course, David writes that that's a little further south in the Vale of Blackmore. I do still hope to get some Dorset content on the channel coming up soon. I have promised Wareham, and I still hope to do something with that before the end of the year. The little grenade pin, now what David's referring to, there was a gate with like a pin. I don't know if it was from a grenade or not, but it was a pin in the gate. It really looked quite odd, but it could have been. You never know. These things do happen. For the gate, it was interesting. Of course, and this is the bit I didn't know. Of course, David goes on to explain where the word grenade comes from. The word grenade comes from pomegranate, which is old French pomegranate. The pomegranate is the symbol of Granada, which is nothing to do with the old ITV station that used to make Coronation Street. Well, they still do, but it's rebranded, you know what I mean. But David actually lives in Spain, and you'll find it everywhere in that state, Granada, in Spain, on bollards and street lamps as well. That's a fascinating fact, David, and I thank you very much for it. In 1485, Lord Lovell, that was the one that was discovered and fought in the Battle of Stoke. He fought his rights to the land and handed them over to the Crown. It then passed through various families before coming into the family, I think it's pronounced Coke, C-O-K-E. It looks like an offshoot of Cole. They had it for a number of years, but until the middle of the 18th century, it then started to fall into disrepair. Later on, it became part of Charterville, one of three very large Chartist estates. I'll put in the bottom all about the Chartist movement, because I always find that a bit confusing as well. In fact, part of the village is still known as Charterville. So remember, we had Old Minster, where I currently am here, Minster Lovell, and Little Minster. We also have one called Charterville allotments, and there's still some of the original allotments you can see running by the side of the road here in West Oxfordshire. Now, also to explain, if you're new around here, about my short bite series. These are really hard to categorise. This is nothing to do with YouTube Shorts. YouTube Shorts are videos which are about 30 seconds long, and they're shot in a ultra portrait format. In other words, they're very tall and thin. It doesn't look great if you're watching YouTube on a TV. It's a completely different format. Now, the ones that I do are usually about 5-7 minutes long, sometimes a little bit less, sometimes a bit more. And there's very different types of them. I always play around with different formats when I'm doing those. They can be a short bite photography one, which is the one that is coming up next I'm going to mention about. They can also be ones like clips, which I put set to music, or they can also be ones with narration, which I've spoken about earlier in the Forest of Dean. But it was to the first one that happened next, and that was at Exeter Cathedral. Now, in a cathedral, they can actually be, and I apologise for the noise here, there's somebody sawing something the other side of this pond here. Apologies for that. They can be quite noisy places because you've got lots of visitors streaming in and out of the doors, and they're talking, and it kind of destroys the atmosphere of the place itself. So I thought about the best way to highlight Exeter Cathedral would be to do it as photography. And then I thought, well, rather than just slapping on a piece of music from YouTube Library that's kind of cathedral-like or religious sounding, why don't I add on some music that was actually recorded inside Exeter Cathedral? And that's in fact what I did. I managed to find that on YouTube, not in the library, but actually recorded live, including some of the sounds from that magnificent organ there. Video seemed to go down really, really well. I've got a great comment here from Faith G, who nearly always writes on all my videos. So thank you very much, Faith. Again, I really love to see your comments. They're really, really interesting. And she writes, slightly humorously at the start, a squintillion years ago. I love that, squintillion. I haven't heard that for a long time. That's brilliant. I just love that, squintillion years ago. My school choir led a week's services there, and I sang a few solos. Oh, Faith, that's amazing. I'm sure no recordings of that survive, but if they do, that'd be fantastic. It'd be wonderful memory. But I'm sure you got the memory of just singing there with that fantastic acoustic. Anyway, Faith goes on to write, how wonderful to see this beautiful cathedral again. Yes, it is, because it is. You do have to pay to go in there. I think they're doing work on it. They're relaying part of the cathedral floor, so it was. I think it's a little bit pricey. I think it's about 15 pounds, but we got in there for, I think it was £7 on the day that I went into Exeter Cathedral there, so half price at the moment. That work's going to be carrying on for a little while, but it's well worth it. Thank you, Faith. And there's a little subset of my railway series and my Lost Railway walks, and these started at the start of this year because my daughter at Christmas time bought me a book for Christmas as a present called Lost Railway Walks, and it's inspired me to do a separate series within railway series, walking along old stretches of railway line. Anyway, this next video was a little bit different to that because you can't actually walk on the former track bed itself. There's no right of way at the moment along it, although there's a lot of interest in the area because they are planning to do just that. There's a local volunteer group. They're trying to get funding together from National Lottery and local councils and government grants, that sort of thing, to get the whole thing resurfaced and reopened between the village of Churston and the town of Brixham. Beautiful town, which I had the privilege, shall I say, of staying in with some great weather this month. So there's a few videos coming up from there, and that was the first one that launched on the channel. So I walked along it as best I could, following it, and also found the site at the railway station in Brixham and walked all the way back to the railway station at Churston. Great comment on that video from Wandering with Watto. Hi Paul and Kim. I believe you're actually in that area as I record this, so I hope you're having a great time down there in South Devon. It is really brilliant place. Hi Paul, having spent so much time in this area over the past 30 years, how am I seeing parts of Brixham that I haven't seen before? I'll come back to that point, it's a great point. I enjoyed the trail. We're there again soon, so we might have to have a poke around some of these places. Yes, thank you very much, Watto, and Kim as well. So I hope you're having a great time there in South Devon. And Paul makes a great point there because Brixham is an odd place because I used to work there. I would often walk around either at lunchtime or before work or after work, because I lived on the other side of the River Dart, just outside Dartmouth, and I thought I knew the town pretty well as well. Anyway, having spent a few days there recently, discovered there's a whole host of places around Brixham I really don't know at all. So yeah, that's kind of how that happened. It's just, there's so much of interest there, not just in the coastline, but also in the neighbouring villages and also in the town itself. Thank you. And I'll put a link into Wandering with Watto, their YouTube channel, so they're YouTubers as well. I'll put that in the description of today's video. Now, my YouTube journey started 2.5 years ago now in the town of Dartmouth. And my first piece of camera was by some steps. And I recently made a video back in Dartmouth again, retracing those literal steps, those YouTube steps. And I do include a clip in that video of my very first piece to camera when I was looking really very unconfident and very unprofessional, and probably the sound and the editing is not as good as what I hoped it to be. And as you go on with YouTube, you do learn techniques and get more confident with the various aspects of it. Anyway, that video had a look at Kingsweir. We went across on the lower Dartmouth ferry, got some shots of that, and I was very lucky to see the paddle steamer going through it as well. A top comment on that video was from Louise from Southwest Sundays. Hi Louise, I only discovered Dartmouth this year. Such a lovely town. I cannot wait to go back and explore more of it. She also adds on, I recently went back to the place where I first made my video too. It brought back lots of memories and made me realise how far I've come in everything from filming to presenting and editing. The growth is gradual, but the distance between the beginning and where I am now is huge. I think it's the same for you. Thank you very much, Louise. That's a brilliant comment. I think it's not sure if it's 17th century or 18th century dovecot here at Minster Lovell. I put it in the bottom there, and they have got white doves. I've seen a few coming and going, but of course as soon as I press the shutter to start recording, they all disappear. But you may see them fluttering around in the background, fingers crossed. The next video was again another one in my short bite series, and this one was a video one, but with only ambient sound. Now these are often tricky to do, as you saw from my last month vlog, but it came together really well. It was filmed at sunset at Arlingham on the River Severn. We'll be walking past that way on the Severn Way. I won't say any more about it than that. It's just beautiful lighting, and I had a great comment from one Michael Pilling. Thank you very much, Michael, for always commenting on my videos. I very much appreciate your support of the channel. And Michael sums up the video and what we saw through the lens of the camera that evening. Absolutely beautiful. From walking the dog via getting in the harvest to the ships at the dock and the sun going down behind the church. Peace, tranquility and gorgeous river scenery. Thank you, Michael. As I said previously, I was in the Brixham area for a few days this month, and when I was making the Lost Row Walks Brixham one, I bumped into a fellow YouTuber called Simon Law, who lives in the Brixham area, is also a photographer, does brilliant videos around Dartmoor and the South Devon coast. When I made another video about Brixham, which was mainly kind of a photography and video clips, a little bit of talking from me, Simon enjoyed it and he wrote a comment which was, I liked the black and white image from the Inner Harbour. I walked part of this route only this morning. Thanks very much, Simon. Thanks for your comments on my Brixham videos. I've still got some more to edit that I filmed when I was down there. Then back on the Severn Way 20A. Why the A? Because, well, I wasn't walking very far, just around the city. It was a rare urban explore, but ones like I've done previously on the Severn Way series at both Worcester and Shrewsbury. The trouble with making this video is that Gloucester, not unlike both Shrewsbury and Worcester, has a vast amount of history, and it's a job to really know where to begin. Well, I'm glad I did begin where I began, if you see what I mean, because I started that video at the Church of St Mary de Lode, which is possibly one of the most historic and oldest parts of Gloucester, although there isn't, as another gentleman commented, he commented that Kingsholm, which is of course famous for Gloucester rugby, of course, there is an older site there, but unfortunately it's really difficult to film there because of the traffic noise, etc. Anyway, so I started there, and anyway, the custodian of the church was around, invited me in, so we managed to see the Roman mosaic which lies beneath that church floor there. Wonderful, really good to see that. Had a great comment on that video from John Timbrell, who actually grew up in Gloucester itself. Now I believe lives in the Forest of Dean, not that far away. It was a very lengthy comment, so I do recommend you actually read all of John's comment. I haven't got time to read it all out, but part of it is, well, it's all really good. This bit I found particularly interesting. I hope you do too. In the Waterways Museum, which we will cover on a Canal Series 1 at some point, in the docks there, it explains where the origin of the word tow rag comes from. Well, this is really interesting. And it is thus explained. Men wearing normal shoes in grain stores, and the docks there at Gloucester Docks has loads of warehouses which would have been full of grain, actually drowned in the grain if they fell in. Yes, you can imagine that. Something that's like 5 or 6 stories high, just full of grain, and you're at the top doing an inspection, you lose your balance, you fall in, you can go right down and literally drown in the grain itself. They avoided this by tying lengths of cloth or rags around their shoes to stop them sinking into the grain. That's an amazing concept. I hadn't even thought of that. Brilliant, but I can imagine it would work. So common labourers that worked in those warehouses who wore a rag became known as tow rags, which has now become a derogatory term Thank you very much for that brilliant comment, John. I'm back in the Great Hall now to wrap up this monthly vlog. We've just found the fireplace. This would have been an important heart of the Great Hall. Got the flue, it's still there, still intact, which is really, really great to see. That's just wonderful. Now, a while ago, Ron from Parkinson's Walks did a great video exploring part of the railway in the Forest of Dean round the village of Drybrook, and he came across a fascinating little light railway which wasn't open. Anyway, I found the Facebook group to them, and it popped up on my Facebook feed that they had an open day, and it was this Sunday just gone. And I managed to get along there and film some of their little locals that they've got on the track they've restored there. Also managed to get into part of what was originally a gold mine. Fascinating place, really, really good. And I had a great comment on that, again from David Berlani. After watching Ron's video, I thought that the Lee Bailey Light Railway had ceased to function, so it was great news to see parts of it being operated and extended as well. The external one further down was one of Ron's best. Yes, now there is a tunnel further on down. I think sometimes it's called Euroclydon. It has another name that I can't remember at the moment. But yeah, check out that video, and I put a link to that video in the Lee Bailey video. There is one more video that landed this month, and that only went up last night, so I haven't seen any comments on that yet, and that was Portishead Part 1. There is a Part 2 to arrive over the next few days. Seems to be doing really well, so thanks if you've watched that. Indeed, thank you if you've watched any of my videos this month. It's always very, very much appreciated. Thank you if you've shared them and if you like them. Now, I'm currently standing in what was the chamber, and on the upper floor of what would have been above, it's difficult to imagine now, was where Lord and Lady Lovell slept. After the hall fell into disrepair in 1700s or so, this was the last surviving building. In fact, it stayed roofed as a thatched cottage right into the middle part of the 19th century. What is a fitting place to close the monthly vlog for the month of September. Thank you for supporting my channel, West Country Wanderings. It means a lot to me. There will be lots of videos coming up. The next one, of course, will probably be after this, Portishead Part 2. I've still got some videos to edit from South Devon, of which there are still quite a few. There'll be another trip along the Severn Way, of course, and sure, there's going to be something on the Lost Railway Walks in the Forest of Dean. Hope to get maybe to Tiddenham Tunnel before that wraps up. Probably going to be something on the Gloucestershire and Warwickshire Steam Railway again as well, and there'll also be a trip down to Cornwall. Yes, I do apologise for neglecting Cornwall for a little bit. There'll be something coming from that county, magnificent county, very soon. And something on the Stroudwater and Thames and Severn Canal. I've got an update for you on that, and also a return to Leominster Canal, though that may spill over into the month of November. But yeah, it's going to be a busy month again here on the channel, West Country Wanderings. Thank you for watching. Take care. All the best. Bye bye.